modern supermarket is a thing of wonder. Even if it's snowing outside and summer is a distant memory, you can buy strawberries, peaches, or grapes. If you want root vegetables in the middle of a heat wave, you can have them. Expat Americans can have their Oreo cookies, while homesick New Zealanders can console themselves with wine and kiwi fruit. Within days of being picked off the vines, the fruit is in your trolley, tasting of spring as the leaves are falling outside. It's all great until you start contemplating the vast mileage sitting in your shopping basket. Those kiwi fruits have traveled nearly 20,000 kilometers, or 12,000 miles. They've flown in a plane and traveled by road. By the time they reach the supermarket, they are responsible for 5 times their own weight in greenhouse gases being pumped into the atmosphere. Increasingly, our food is coming from farther and farther away, and we are becoming more and more dependent on the fuel it takes to get them to us. This dependence was illustrated very clearly during the September 2000 fuel price protest in Britain. Inspired by similar actions in France, a group of farmers and lorry drivers decided to blockade the Stanlow oil refinery in Cheshire. The protest quickly snowballed, and petrol tankers were unable to leave refineries. Panic buying saw more than 90% of petrol stations run dry, and with supplies unable to get through, supermarket shelves quickly emptied. It's estimated that food now accounts for as much as 40% of all UK road freight, and the international food trade is increasing faster than the world's population and food production. In other words, food is moving around more than ever, and the environmental impact could be huge. Despite the UK's cool climate being perfectly suited for growing apples, nearly 3/4 of the apples eaten in the UK are imported, and more than 60% of Britain's apple orchards have been destroyed in the past 30 years. We are now putting more energy into transporting some crops than we get out of eating them. For every calorie of lettuce imported to the UK from America's west coast, 127 calories of fuel are used. Put it another way, flying over a kilogram of California lettuce uses enough energy to keep a 100-watt light bulb glowing for 8 days. On April 4th, 2003, Glenn Keane, one of Walt Disney's most respected animators, called for a meeting to discuss the war breaking out at the studio. Disney's animators have settled into two opposing camps: those who were skilled in computer animation and those who refused to give up their pencils. Keane, a 31 veteran who created The Beast for Beauty and the Beast and Ariel for The Little Mermaid, was a Disney traditionalist, but after a series of experiments to see whether he could create a computer animated ballerina, his opposition softened. So he invited 50 animators to discuss the pros and cons of both art forms, calling his seminar "The Best of Both Worlds." For an hour, Keane listed the pluses and the minuses of each technique, while the other animators listened quietly. After a few questions, the crowd burst into chatter as animators shouted over one another, some arguing that computers should not replace people, and others expressing fears that they would be forced to draw by hand. In a recent interview, Keane recalled that Kevin Geiger, a computer animation supervisor, then stood up and demanded of him, "If you can do all this cool stuff that you're talking about, that you want to see in animation, but you have to give up the pencil to do it, are you in?" Keane hesitated before answering, "I'm in." 3 weeks later, the company's animators were told that Disney would concentrate on making computer-animated movies, abandoning a 7-year-old hand-drawn tradition in favor of a style popularized by newer and more successful rivals like Pixar Animation Studios and DreamWorks Animation. The results were nothing short of a cultural revolution at the studio, which is famous for the hand-drawn classics championed by its founder, Walt Disney, like Snow White and Seven Dwarfs and Peter Pan. 2 years and a half after that decision, Disney released Chicken Little, the first of 4 computer-animated films developed at the newly reorganized studio. The company hoped that this movie, along with others like Meet the Robinson, American Dog, and King's Rapunzel Unbraided, would return Disney to its past glory. There was a lot more than pride, however, riding on its success. Animation was once Disney's heart, a profitable lifeline that fed the company's theme park, book, and home video divisions, and restoring profit was as essential to Disney in those days as regaining its reputation. Casey Nicole was a 19-year-old girl from Kansas dying of cancer, or so believed the thousands of people who visited her website, on which she kept a diary of her fight against cancer. For over a year, Casey Nicole had added updates to her diary, letting people know about the ups and downs of her struggle with the disease, about her hope when her condition temporarily improved, and about her fear when the cancer reappeared. Casey's mother, Debbie, maintained a companion journal in which she discussed what it was like caring for a child with cancer. Many people grew extremely close to Casey. They communicated with her via email, chatted with her in online chat rooms, and some even phoned her. Then on May 15, 2001, Casey Nicole died from bleeding in the brain. Her online friends despaired. They sought for ways to express their sorrow. They wanted to send gifts to her family. Some even wanted to attend her funeral. And that's when things began to get suspicious. Casey's mother refused to provide anyone with information about where the funeral was being held or where to send the gifts. This prompted a group of individualists who participated in the online community Metafilter to find out what was going on. What they discovered was disturbing. Casey's death had not been recorded by any obituary they could locate, nor could anyone remember ever having met Casey in person. They began to wonder if Casey actually existed. Their fears were proved a few days later when Debbie Swanson, a 40-year-old woman from Kansas, confessed that she had invented Casey and written all the diary entries herself. The photos of Casey that appeared on the site were simply pictures of a neighbor used without that neighbor's knowledge. Whether anyone had thought that they were emailing Casey, it was actually Debbie they were communicating with. Debbie Swanson remained unwilling to admit her fault in her confessions, claiming that Casey was real in a way because the character of Casey was a blend of a number of cancer victims whom Debbie had known. She added that she hadn't realized so many people were reading the diary. This hardly satisfied the thousands of people who felt cheated because their kindness and sympathy had been taken advantage of. The FBI even looked into the case, but determined that because Debbie Swanson hadn't gained money from the hoax, she hadn't actually committed a crime which was serious enough to take her to court. The internet is very much like television in that it takes time away from other pursuits, provide entertainment and information, but in no way can compare with the warm personal experience of reading a good book. This is not the only reason why the internet will never replace books. For books provide a sufficient knowledge of a subject that sitting in front of a computer monitor cannot provide. We can transfer text from an internet source, but the artistic quality of sheets of transferred text leaves much to be desired. A well-designed book makes the reading experience important. The book is still the most compact and economical means of conveying a lot of knowledge in a convenient package, and this is what makes it popular. The idea that one can carry in one's pocket a play by Shakespeare, a novel by Charles Dickens, or the Bible in a small book with a stiff paper cover is incredible. We take such uncommon common convenience for granted, not realizing that the book itself has undergone quite an evolution since the production of the Greenberg Bible in 1455 and Shakespeare's book of plays in 1623. Not only has the art and craft of printing and making books been greatly improved over the centuries, but the great variety of subject matter now available in books is surprising to say the least. In fact, the internet requires the constant entry of authors and their books to obtain the information that makes it a useful tool for research and learning. Another important reason why the internet will never replace books is because those who wish to become writers want to see their works permanently published as books, something you can hold, see, feel, look through, and read at your leisure without the need for an electric current apart from a lamp. The writer may use a computer instead of a pen and a pad, but the finished product must eventually end up as a book if it is to have value to the reading public. The writer may use the internet in the course of researching a subject just as he may use a library for that purpose, but the end product will still be a book. In any public space, there will be groups of people having face-to-face conversations. These conversations are not perceived as annoying. No one is suggesting that there should be railway carriages where people are not allowed to speak to one another. Logically, the sound energy created by two people conversing face-to-face should be twice that created by one person conversing with an unheard partner on their mobile phone, if the latter appears to be more annoying. There are a number of possible explanations for this puzzle. One is that the content or the volume of the conversation tends to be more annoying in some mobile phone conversations because of the way that people choose to use their mobile phones. Some people may speak very loudly, or they may have chosen loud and intrusive ringing tones. Excessive loudness is a major cause of annoyance for all sorts of sounds. It is possible that people's perceptions are colored by just one or two bad experiences of intrusive mobile phone use, or reflect media concerns over new technology. Another possible factor is the novelty of the mobile phone technology. People are used to others having face-to-face conversations in public spaces and have learned to ignore them. The mobile phone is relatively new and hence more noticeable. In the United Kingdom, almost 70% of households now own at least one mobile phone. However, such widespread usage is still relatively new. People today are worried about food safety. As a result, the popularity of organic farming of fruits and vegetables is increasing. But what exactly does organic farming mean? It is probably easier to explain what organic farming is not. Organic farming does not use pesticides or fertilizers. Instead, this style of farming uses natural methods to protect plants to help them grow. So organic agricultural products are thought to be generally safer than non-organic ones. In the United States, about 2% of all food is grown using organic methods. The U.S. government actually licenses farms as organic if they pass an examination. Presently, there are about 10,000 licensed farmers in the U.S., and this number is growing by about 20% a year. In addition to food safety, another reason for the popularity of organic fruits and vegetables is that they taste better. This is why many restaurants only buy organic products. A lot of people think organic farming is not competitive compared to other methods because it cannot grow the same quantity of food. However, new research has shown that organic farming only grows on average about 5% less than non-organic methods. Still, organic food today is more expensive than non-organic food. But when the environmental and health costs of non-organic farming are considered, such as the pollution of water by pesticides, most people would agree that the higher price of organic farming is in fact a small price to pay for our health and safety. Doctors have long told patients that medicine is something you swallow in a pill. That evidence is growing that shows the best medicine might be found in your grocery store, not your drugstore. More and more researchers are concluding that the right foods will not only prevent disease, but in some cases actually cure it as well. Most major diseases can be reversed through approaches using good nutrition, says Dr. Joel Furman,
a doctor who specializes in nutritional medicine as an alternative to surgery and drugs. Fleming is the author of a book about eating for health. Food is more effective than medicine, he stated. All we've got to do is eat right, and disease melts away. Some other doctors find Furman's view on food and disease a bit extreme, but he's not alone in his belief that diet plays an important role in human health. Researchers at the University of Illinois are conducting a major program to identify food components that can fight disease and promote good health. Identify food components that can fight disease and promote good health. One of the major foods being investigated is the soybean. There has been a tremendous amount of information that shows the soybean's ability to reduce cholesterol, said Claire M. Hassler, director of the research program at the University of Illinois. And by lowering your cholesterol, you lower the risks for heart disease. In one of the 3 clinical tests on the human performed at the university, a diet that included 50 grams of soybean extract per day in the form of drinks and baked foods was found to be significant in reducing cholesterol in a 4-week period, according to Hassler. She cautions that people with high cholesterol levels should see a doctor but said soybean products can safely be introduced into the diet as part of an overall health improvement strategy. According to Dr. Keith Block, the soybean is one of the most powerful medicines and is a great food to prevent disease. It probably has significant treatment benefits for cancer patients. Soybeans contain a compound that naturally stops the supply of nutrients and blood that cancer needs to grow. At Block's private clinics, he uses what he calls nutrition therapy as one component for treating cancer patients. Ordinary household dogs with only a few weeks of basic puppy training learn to accurately distinguish between breath samples of lung and breast cancer patients and healthy subjects. Our study provides strong evidence that cancers hidden beneath the skin can be detected simply by dogs examining the smell of a person's breath, said Michael McCulloch, who led the research. Early detection of cancers greatly improves a patient's survival chances, and the researchers hope that man's best friend, the dog, can become an important tool in finding cancers early. The new study is scheduled to appear in the March issue of the journal Integrative Cancer Therapies. Was conducted by the Pine Street Foundation, a cancer research organization in San Anselmo, California. Dogs can identify chemical traces in the range of parts per trillion. Previous studies have confirmed the ability of a trained dog to detect skin cancer by smelling the skin damage. Also, some researchers hope to prove dogs can detect prostate cancer by smelling patients' urine. Dogs' scent ability to detect the scent of cancer was something that was often discussed for many years, but we felt it was appropriate to design a thorough study that seriously investigated this topic to see if it is really effective, said Nicholas Brofman, executive director of the Pine Street Foundation. Lung and breast breast cancer patients are known to breathe or patterns of biochemical markers in their breath. Cancer cells produce different metabolic waste products than normal cells, Borgman said. The differences between these metabolic products are so great that they can be detected by a dog's keen sense of smell, even in the early stages of disease. The researchers used food reward-based method to train 5 ordinary household dogs. Encountering breath samples captured in tooths, the dog gave a positive identification of a cancer patient by sitting in front of the correct sign. By scent alone, the dogs distinguished 55 lung and 31 breast cancer patients from 83 healthy humans. The results of the study showed that the dogs could detect breast cancer and lung cancer between 88 and 97% of the time. The high degree of accuracy persisted, whether the patients were smokers or not. Moreover, it did not seem to matter which dog it was or which stage the cancer had reached. If everybody on Earth consumed as much oil as the average American, the world's known reserves would be gone in a decade. Even at current rates of consumption, known reserves would not last through the current century. Experts, however, are not worried. New technologies, they say, will avert a global energy crisis. Already, oil companies have developed cheaper ways to find oil and extract it from the ground, effectively extending the supply into the 22nd century. Still, there is a finite amount of oil on the planet, and someday will be gone. Even before that happens, concerns about global warming may compel the world to stop burning so much fossil fuel. The energy industry is preparing for that day by investing in technologies that will replace fossil fuels, solar, nuclear, and wind power, and all possibilities, but many experts say the most likely candidate is a fuel cell. A fuel cell is essentially a hydrogen-powered battery that produces no pollution. Its only byproduct is water, and since hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, supply should not be a problem. This all depends, however, on the technology being developed. Neglect of the mind-body link by technological medicine is actually a brief aberration when viewed against the whole history of the healing art. In traditional tribal medicine and in Western practice from its beginning in the work of Hippocrates, the need to operate through the patient's mind has always been recognized. Until the 19th century, medical writers rarely failed to note the influence of grief, despair, or discouragement on the onset and outcome of illness, nor did they ignore the healing effects of faith, confidence, and peace of mind. Contentment used to be considered a prerequisite for health. The modern medicine man has gained so much power over certain diseases through drugs. However, that he has forgotten about the potential strength within the patient. One elderly physician friend recently told me of reading the diary of his uncle, also doctor. In the early years, the diarist always recorded what happened to the individual or the community prior to an illness or epidemic. But as medicine became more technological, this part of the history grew less and less important to him and finally was omitted altogether. Awareness of the mind's powers was lost as medicine cast out all soft data. The information that's not easily quantified or scientific. A fly can do one thing extremely well, fly. Recently, a team of British scientists declared that the common housefly is the most talented aerodynamicist on the planet, superior to any bird, bat, or bee. A housefly can make 6 turns a second, hover, fly straight up, down, or backward, land on the ceiling, and perform various other show-off maneuvers, and it has a brain smaller than a sesame seed. Michael Dickinson, who studies fly flight in his lab at the California Institute of Technology, says the housefly is actually the best flyer. Hoverflies are the be-all and end-all. He says they can hover in one spot, dash to another location, and then race back to the original hovering point precisely. Scientists, engineers, and the military researchers want to know how creatures with such small brains can do that. Maybe they could reverse engineer a fly to make a robotic device that could reconnoiter dangerous places such as earthquake zones or collapsed mines. Dickinson's laboratory works with fruit flies. Researchers put them in chambers and manipulate the visual field, filming the flies in super slow motion, 6,000 frames a second. Dickinson is interested in knowing how flies avoid collisions. He has found that certain patterns, such as 90-degree turns, are triggered by visual cues and 2 equilibrium organs on their backs that function like a gyroscope. Flies have only a dozen muscles for maneuvering, but they're loaded with sensors. In addition to their compound eyes, which permit panoramic imagery and are excellent at detecting motion, they have wind-sensitive hairs and antennae. They also have 3 light sensors on the tops of their heads, which tell them which way is up. Roughly 2/3 of a fly's entire nervous system is devoted to processing visual images. They take all the sensory data and boil it down to a few basic commands, such as go left and go right. Go left and go right.